Hi, friends. My name is Pat, and you're listening to the I Used to Think podcast, a podcast about people who are brave enough to change their mind. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. In 2012, Jerry joined the video game company Riot Games as their chief HR officer. During his time at Riot Games, the company grew tremendously, and so did the video game industry as a whole. Jerry observed as video games went from being fun, entertaining products to addicting products. He saw the ways in which games evolved from being enjoyable pastimes into monetization machines. After witnessing the effects of technology on society and mental health, Jerry decided to make a switch and became a licensed therapist to make a meaningful impact on his community. In today's episode, we cover a wide variety of topics regarding technology. Jerry and I talk about how there really is no such thing as an ethics-driven company as opposed to a profit-driven company, social media and how different social media bans have occurred around the world, and also how to properly engage with AI rather than ignore it. Although we discuss the somber reality of technological developments, we talk about how we can counteract those negative effects through simple community gatherings, such as board games and role-playing games, which is something that Jerry has been doing ever since he was young. Jerry brings a wide range of knowledge and experience to this conversation. He is a Navy veteran and also runs his own AI consulting business today. I think the topics that we talk about in this conversation are very relevant, and I hope to include more of this in future episodes. Let's get started. Jerry, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you taking time to hang out and have this conversation.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
We'll start with the icebreaker. And since the theme of this show is very much being online and the internet and tech related, I thought we would go the opposite direction and have an icebreaker about what folks call the quote unquote real world. My icebreaker for you today is, based on your travels, everywhere you've been in your life, what would you say is the most beautiful place on earth, in your opinion, and why?
It's always home, wherever home is. I've traveled many, many places. And I think after you travel a lot, you realize that everyone says everywhere they've went is beautiful. And then after a while, it gets a little old. But I love being at home because I have a beautiful view of the Oregon Mountains. So I'm fortunate in that way here in southern New Mexico, the land of enchantment, as they call it. If I had to put a pin on a map somewhere that I've been, there are some aspects of the Carpathian Mountains in Romania and that part of the world that are remote and fascinating. I got to travel there when I was living in Cyprus in Europe. So I think there are probably many, many beautiful places I could point out, but I'm going to do the Wizard of Oz and say there's no place like home.
I'm curious, was the Romania trip just something you did for fun?
Yeah, I mean, I needed a break and I wanted to go someplace remote. And we decided to take a guided tour of like some of the more famous parts of Romania, from Bucharest to Dracula's castle to other places. But then we also wanted to go somewhere remote and away from everything. And that gave us a chance to see a place that was kind of got this history, a really interesting intersection of cultures and languages. So yeah, that's how I ended up there.
How long have you lived where you are right now?
I came to southern New Mexico in 2018,
Okay.
August 2018. Yeah.
The other day, I was on, I think, Substack, and I saw someone post the photo of a sunset. And the caption was, "There's nothing like a New Mexico sunset."
There's a big sky here. And if you ever wonder Purple Mountain majesties, that is a real thing. And when you see it, it is really, really gorgeous.
What would you say is something unique about New Mexico that you appreciate compared to all the other places you've lived?
Well, it doesn't have the things I don't like. I don't like humidity. I've never been a fan of it. And I
Okay.
don't like snow. And maybe when I should be more specific, I don't like really high humidity and I don't like lots of snow. So by eliminating those two things, and then of course, what I do like, which is therefore a lot of sunshine.
hmm
And I also like, obviously, a drier climate. New Mexico really, I think, provides that in abundance.
I'll have to go. I've actually never been before. I'll let you give a brief introduction of yourself, however you'd like to, just for folks get to know Jerry better. Who are you and what are you about?
Yeah, I'm going to assume you mean a professional introduction because I think in the US, when we ask, who are you, we're asking for a resume at some level. So I'll start there. Yeah, look, I started far away from what I'm doing now. I started as a nuclear engineer in the US Navy. I did that for 12 years, got to be a plank owner on 2 ships, aircraft carriers. So working with naval reactors was really cool. Then I went back home. I was from Chicago, went to grad school at the University of Chicago. So that was a phenomenal experience. From there, worked at the global consulting firm Accenture. And while I was at Accenture, started looking at tech more closely, did my first sort of startup called the VVV Gaming. It was an esports organization around competitive gaming. And that's where Riot Games found me. And I joined Riot Games in 2012. When I joined, we were about 400 people. When I left, we were 2,200.
Wow.
So hyperscaling. And I was sort of the head of people operations at Riot Games. So think of HR, but the talent side. Yeah, it was phenomenal. It was a great experience. I learned a lot there. And then would go on to be the chief human resource officer at Wargaming, stretch out into being the head of third-party publishing there as well. And then after that, opened my own studio. We shipped a game called Dark Sky on Steam. And then after that, I think I had a change of heart. I think I had a change of heart while I was running my own studio, that the world didn't need another video game. And what it took to be competitive had changed. And I just didn't have the heart for games anymore. So that was a career transition for me to get out of games. So my view on tech had changed significantly too as time went on as well.
I appreciate you introducing yourself. I don't want to spoil the episode too much. So I'll let you get into what you used to think. Jerry, what did you used to think?
Yeah, that's a great question. I used to think that being successful in tech was all about engagement, that you want to make something very engaging. And over time, engagement started to mean almost stealing attention, getting people into compulsion loops, behavior that felt more addictive than engaging to me. So now I'm not so sure that's what ethical technology should look like.
I'll just say briefly for myself, I've been thinking about this topic a lot, so I'm very excited for this conversation. Wrote here and there about tech, especially among Gen Z, and how I've actually seen a trend among Gen Z of being more anti-tech, or at the very least, Gen Z is very aware of their tech usage. I briefly mentioned to you, I'm going through a book by Paul Kingsnorth called Against the Machine that talks about sort of this techno-capitalism world we're living in. And I bring that up just so that listeners are aware that I very much have a bias and is skewed towards, I think, where you would probably sit right now and what you think. But I want to start with your own personal story. So maybe starting in tech, how you started in that industry and what you were seeing at that time, the energy that you felt around the industry at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I go back in time to when the Xbox was released, when Halo and Halo 2 came out, the Xbox 360 games. We were online. It was just incredible. Met a lot of younger people who were excited. And I think that is what got me into esports, creating a community for amateur players to have a path to professional gaming, which for many young people was a dream at that time. So I founded VV Gaming in 2007 and then did that for about 5 years before Riot found me. And I think it was a passion play for me. It was just something that I loved doing because I love gaming so much. And not just video games, but I love board games. I love tabletop role-playing games. I just think games are a phenomenal tool for teaching and getting to know people. And so I think at that time, it was really exciting. League of Legends had been released, and joining Riot Games was an excellent opportunity. Mark and Brandon, the co-founders, were just brilliant and phenomenal. And back then, free to play was brand new. It was something that most people associated with bad Chinese games were only free to play. Today, that model has shifted dramatically, right? So when League launched, I think it was 2009, but there were a couple other. Dota was still around. That was before Dota 2. There was Heroes of North, Han as it was called. So yeah, it was an exciting time. And over time, the fun, the engagement, all of it was exciting. And I don't think there's anything bad about enjoying your time with something, but
Hmm.
we were we were majority owned by Tencent. And then when I left Riot, Tencent effectively bought out the entire organization. And Tencent had a very different philosophy, I think, in some ways. They knew Riot's philosophy had made it successful, but Tencent, which is a giant Chinese conglomerate, there is sort of a story about there being a clock on the wall at Tencent, and their sort of view of that clock is that every second that that clock ticks, we want somebody in our products. Right? Like in China, for example, WeChat is kind of the Swiss Army knife of apps. It combines so many things. It's literally necessary to do business and sort of have a life in China is to use WeChat. So American companies, I think, picked up on that. And as we started to gather data and know more about people, and you could start seeing tech shift to engage at a very, very deep level. And I think that engagement over time, it was hard to not see that things were starting to shift. When your metric is how long someone is in your product, you start to do things that maximize that. And the question is that fun? Is that addiction?
Hmm.
You wanted to avoid it feeling like work, but you were riding that line. How engaging could it be without making it feel like work? Because if it felt too much like work, players would ultimately spin out. So you were looking for that sweet spot, right? And we started to grow, I think, exponentially with our technological capability to really understand our users. And Riot, we call them players. If you're at Facebook, everybody had a name for their customer. But I think we became less mature morally.
Hmm.
We weren't thinking about the impact that we were having and how there are only 24 hours in a day. And you're kind of in this myopic view where you're only looking at how much players are spending on your platform. But you never ask the question, where did we steal those hours from? Did we steal them from Netflix, or did we steal them for quality time with their family and friends? I don't think anybody really asks that question enough. I think that's why we have the tech that we do today.
Hmm. Right. When you think back to Riot Games, you said you started in 2012.
I didn't.
Okay. When you think back to 2012 Riot Games, and whether spoken or unspoken, the ultimate goal or mission of the company for the customer, what would that have been? Would it have been metrics or something a little more positive and healthy?
I mean, Riot wanted to be the most player focused game company in the world. It was its mission statement. And it knew that if you made gamers happy and gamers are having a good experience, they would spend more time in your product. And if they spend more time in your product, you are more likely to monetize them. And that's kind of the DNA of free to play, at least in games, right? If it's free to play, why would anybody spend money? And so you needed to create an ecosystem where if they were going to spend money, it was because things like their identity, their social circle, that there were online meaning making that brought them into the game and kept them there.
Hmm.
And I think in many ways, back in the Riot days, it was a positive, naive approach to making an awesome business model work. And Riot pioneered that.
Hmm.
But as time went on, all of that started to shift. And I don't see games just competing with other games anymore. I mean, games compete with social media, they compete with never ending video loops. There's all sorts of things that now today, from the function of scrolling endlessly to auto start next video features that are everywhere,
Oh, man.
everyone is trying to keep you in the tech. Right?
Right.
And the truth is that we don't we don't know where this necessarily ends. And you add on top of that that we are about to run this experiment all over again with artificial intelligence.
Was there a moment or a year that you felt the shift happening? You mentioned sort of the shift in the mission, the shift in the goal, maybe either at your company or in the industry at large.
Definitely, I would say maybe 2019. This was definitely after I had left wargaming, started my own studio and raising funds and listening to what VCs were looking at. The more I talked to VCs, the more I talked to investors, the more I understood how big and how engaged they really wanted audiences. They're looking for huge successes. If you do the math, if they're going to give a studio, so I don't know, let's start them out at anywhere between 5 to 20 million to make a video game, you're going to want them to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars on that return. And you need a large player base, and you need people engaged and want to spend money in your product. So, I mean, even World of Warcraft survives because of its social infrastructure, because of its catering to a specific group. There are a lot of monetization hooks now in all kinds of games. And when I say monetization hooks, ways to keep players engaged with the product that encourages them to spend money. Right? So I feel there's a point when you start to recognize that everyone's doing it. And it's now almost to the level of being this kind of race to the bottom where everyone's trying to make sure that their product is the most engaging. And that has consequences, right?
What should the goal of a tech company be, whether it's social media or video gaming? What is the better goal if it's not metrics and engagement?
I'm a realist. So I don't mean to talk badly to Gen Z. So Gen Z, I apologize in advance, but the lofty idea that we're going to somehow dodge capitalism, that's not happening. So ultimately, you have to accept that capitalism, which is the legal structure by which a company exists, requires you to generate a profit. So that is the challenge, is that the incentives are always going to be profit motivated. And that means companies are always going to put travel at the speed that they can avoid doing damage that hurts their profit. There isn't a morality per se in a company. There isn't an ethics per se in a company. The morality and ethics is don't lose money.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do so much damage to your brand or identity that you lose customers.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That is, unless we have the invention of a new type of capitalism, or we have a way to constrain capitalism in a way that has more moral foundation that balances out the quest for profit. Companies, by their very legal nature, are obligated to generate a profit.
Right. Yeah, when I sent this question to you earlier and you typed out a response and sent it over to me, you had a line in here that I underlined. You said the right question is, did we make the user's life meaningfully better in a way they would recognize and endorse? And is there a way to have that at the forefront as a goal for a company? Because I don't necessarily see that being mutually exclusive from profit. Because as you mentioned earlier, if a user feels like their life is becoming meaningfully better, will that not automatically lead to profit? So why is it that companies are not necessarily thinking that way? I think a good example of this, I read recently that Costco pays its employees, I think 3 times the national average for a retail store. And so they have the well-being of their employees, and obviously profit is still a factor here, but they have the well-being of beings of their employees in mind, and Costco is doing well. I mean, their shares are up. So I'm trying to figure out why is it that it seems like a lot of companies feel that this is mutually exclusive.
I think it's because the way we would word that as executives is, so Costco is not paying its employees 3 times because they're doing a good in the world. Their business model requires them to have a certain level of talent in a retail environment. And they've decided to make a high level talent play. We want the very best people working at Costco because our business model and our business requires the very best people to deliver the experience, the prices that our customers want. You can spin it however you want, but I'm going to throw bullshit on it if anybody says to me, oh, they're doing it because they recognize, no, because Walmart is way more successful than they are, and they don't pay, not at all, right? So the market recognizes Costco's play, but if I am a major institution who's investing, I might have a greater portion of my profits in Walmart or my investment capital in Walmart than Costco because the ROI might be higher there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there's a whole bunch of factors in that, like growth potential and other things. But broadly speaking, most companies have a strategy. Riot Games paid a lot too. Mm-hmm. Riot also believed to deliver what it was doing, it needed the best talent. And so you're going to go way above the market rate to get that best talent because you have to.
Right.
But, as time goes on, you're still not doing it because you're trying to be a good corporate citizen. The plus side is you can say you're a good corporate citizen.
Right.
Right. It's true. You are. Right. But again, I think we found out how true that is in the current political climate. A lot of people are wondering what happened to all these good guy tech companies who used to say they're not going to do any harm in the world. And all of a sudden we might have some behaviors coming from our political leaders that we would think that tech companies would speak out about, their employees are upset about, and they're very quiet because they have a obligation to do one thing and one thing only, and that is generate profit for their shareholders within reason.
Right.
And until that changes, I think it's important not to be naive about the system that we have collectively bought into. And until people find political leaders that are willing to work to change that system, to put more guardrails on it, to incentivize companies to do well, we are going to continue to operate at a risk level that does cause harm in its operational day-to-day work.
Mm-hmm. When you said the shift sort of happened around 2019, and then I believe from there, if I'm following correctly, you went on to start your own gaming company. Was there a sense for you of you were going to stay in the industry as a way to sort of redeem it? And if so, do you think it was possible for you to stay in the industry and make actual change?
No, my co-founder and I knew this was going to be it. We were going to try this, and if we could be successful doing it our way, we would. But that was also when everyone was talking about crypto. Investors were talking about crypto. They're talking about digital currency. Everybody was talking about blockchain. They really wanted gaming companies to find ways to play to earn, where you could play the game and earn money. And I just rejected that outright. I was like, when you confuse play and work, you make a fundamental, it's almost like a first principle mistake. Don't do that. But the zeitgeist at the time was that. And no investor likes to go against the zeitgeist. So you have to be really conscious of how that investor zeitgeist affects where capital is being deployed and where it's not being deployed. And we learned that, I think, the hard way. We kind of walked into it going, this is not about what we thought it was about. That early stage startups need to be aligned with the zeitgeist, aligned with what investors see as a big opportunity. It would be very difficult to start a company today and not be AI first and center, regardless of what you're doing, right?
Sure.
That's where the opportunity is.
Right.
Or at least the zeitgeist believes that's where the opportunity is, and that is what matters.
So you eventually made a career switch, and I'll let you get into it and elaborate on that. At what point was there sort of a breaking point and you realized, okay, it's either make a shift and pivot or continue along buying into the zeitgeist?
I mean, look, data started coming out about the harm that technology was doing. And then we started knowing it wasn't just trolls and bots were buying ads to influence elections. It wasn't a few kids got bullied online. It was we were seeing pretty good data that said, well, we might be harming human development. That's a big deal, right? And I think for me, when China started really getting serious about age restrictions around technology, it was also a sign that they were taking this seriously. And they have no reason to, I say this with a great deal of respect, when you have a billion people, you have a lot of room for collateral damage and still maintain your sort of ability to compete economically. But when they recognize that there was no future exposing young people to this anymore, I think they made the right move. And I think since then, I think we've seen Australia ban technology for young people in very important ways, specifically social media. So I think, right, the gaming landscape has forever changed. Gaming to me is much like breathing. Most everybody breathes. I'm certain of that. And most people have played a video game in their life now, right? It's pretty much it. Today, most people don't realize that Roblox is probably the largest single entity in video games, right? If I were to take Steam, Xbox Live, and I don't know, insert Fortnite, combine those, I still probably have less players than Roblox has every month, right?
Wow.
Just to give you an idea of the size. So with that fact being shared, the game industry had changed so much that being in World of Warcraft, playing League of Legends, you're probably older. Probably, right? So it wasn't something that I thought at this point the world needed another video game. I had to do something more meaningful.
I hope I'm not bringing us too much on a tangent here. We can just touch on it briefly. But regarding the social media bans, I didn't know China was the first to initiate on that. I did hear about the Australia one. I say this just because I've received pushback from my peers and people around me when I talk about how positive a thing I personally think it is. The main concerns I hear brought up is that it's another form of government surveillance or government restriction, and that also that there's a lot of skepticism about whether that could work. You have websites now that will ask you to confirm your age, and you just click a button and just lie about what age you are. I don't know how the Australian ban works, but what are your responses to those types of criticisms and concerns about the ban?
I mean, at a very basic philosophical level, I would respond with, should we let 12-year-olds smoke? Should we let 12-year-olds buy alcohol? Should we let 12-year-olds drive? We regulate all kinds of things. Do we let 12-year-olds become doctors? I mean, we license so many things, right? I mean, you have to get a license even to be a barber. Is that government overreach? I think government has a very important role to play in people's safety. There's a bit of a libertarian in that kind of philosophy, that sort of libertarian philosophy that governments need to be as tiny as possible because we can't trust them. I think there's a cruelty to that I don't appreciate. I think you need to be thoughtful and you need to be smart. Okay, so a few really astute 12-year-old professional drinkers are not going to get a chance to get that whiskey. I'm willing to take that risk, right? A bunch of young people who could handle social media are just going to have to wait a little bit longer, right? I don't personally believe that you create laws that are going to be 100% enforceable. I mean, I can give a kid a drink. Nobody would know. That's in the privacy of my, a kid smoke, take crack. You can do all those things. They happen. So what I think has to happen is there has to be we have to move away from naivety and idealism, and we have to avoid cynicism. We have to find a balance between those two things. We have to understand that we have an opportunity to set things on a right course and respect that some people will find a way around that and do what they believe is in the best interest of themselves. But again, if a 12-year-old stumbles out of a house and tries to cross the street drunk, and somebody calls child services or child protective services, whatever it is called, wherever you live, that's the risk you took. And that's the world we live in. It's got guardrails. You may not like some of those guardrails, but we've agreed as a civilized society to live within those constraints for the greater good. I may not like some speed limits, and I understand the risk if I go over them. But I agree for the greater good of civil society, these are probably helpful. And that speed limit when I am 18 or when I am 30 feels kind of unnecessary. When you're 65, when you're 75, when you're 80 and you're still driving, maybe it's extra good. When you're 16 and you're driving, you don't have a lot of experience in the rain and bad weather, that speed limit might be the very thing that saves your life. I'd rather fall to that caution than this sort of cynicism around government overreach.
Mm. Yeah, well said. And I think it's a difficult question. And all of this is very fresh in the grand scheme of things. But I appreciate your take on that. I wanted to get into now, again, the career switch that you made. You're now currently working in the mental health industry as a licensed counselor. How did that happen? And your thoughts about so far the impact that you've been able to make doing this new career.
Yeah, that's interesting. So as we were shipping the game, I had a benefit I hadn't used through the military. And I thought, well, I can get an advanced degree here when I change careers. I might as well get one. And I was talking to the rehabilitation counselor with Veterans Administration, as I am a disabled veteran. And in talking to that person, I said, well, you've got a cool job. Tell me about your job. And I sort of listened to it. And then I started asking, well, what's the best school in the country for that job? Who writes textbooks? And they pointed me to the University of Wisconsin Stout. So I joined that program. I finished this year, just finishing, and I'm out in the field. I have clients. I do that sort of thing. And I enjoy it greatly. It was, for me, a kind of natural extension coming from the people space in business into sort of the counseling space. That was somewhat of a natural transition. And I also wanted to play with impact. I think you can have individual and family impact. You can have your community, local impact, and then you can have broader impact. And I'd been working in broader impact for a very long time. And I wanted to shrink that bubble and see what that felt like. And I don't know yet if I'll be happy with this level of impact, to be honest. I see about a dozen clients every week. They seem to be happy. I enjoy the help that I'm giving them. I think it's meaningful. I think it's valuable. And yet there is a part of me that keeps an eye on everything else and says, what else do I think? And that's where I spend time with artificial intelligence as well. I spend a lot of time. And it's because I think it is the single biggest transformational technology of my lifetime. I mean, I love computers, I love the internet, and those would be necessary for us to get where we are today. But we are in a place where a lot of things are going to change, and the speed of that change is going to be much faster than I think we're ready for.
I'm curious how you see the progression of your patients and your clients right now in regards to the technology. I'm assuming they know your background, that you're familiar with tech. Do you see that being in therapy, being in counseling has affected their relationship with technology, or is that not something that comes up very frequently in sessions?
I try not to reveal anything about my personal life with my clients because I want to be the blank slate. I think that's healthier, in my opinion, that we're focused on them, not my experience. With that being said, as I'm building rapport with my clients, there may be things that I can empathize with a lot. Like somebody who starts talking about, I need to get to bed sooner. I'm not getting enough sleep. And I spend my time at night on YouTube and scrolling social media, right? So my role as a counselor is to guide them to better sleep hygiene and help them understand techniques and tools that will help them establish that better sleep hygiene. That's a small impact, but it could be very meaningful for that individual once they're able to get that use under control. I find that rewarding. So I do see the challenges. I see them more frequently than I'd like to admit. And I think I'm able to relate to them. If I have somebody who they'll talk to me about their World of Warcraft raiding guild that meets in the evenings and that they end up spending, too late up. I understand how that social mechanic is built around raids and maybe give them some tips on how to better disengage from the product sooner so they're not doing that, or socialize earlier. just slowly adjusting behavior so they can see the benefits of changing that behavior, which hopefully then becomes the motivation for them to continue to get control over their lives in the way that puts them in a place they want to be as the client.
What would be a reason you would aim for more large impact now that you've sort of shrunk down and you've experienced the impact you can make here? What would be a reason you would maybe adjust to, I think you mentioned working with nonprofits or consulting with tech companies? What would convince you to make that change?
I don't know if I like the answer to that. I think it's my own ego. And I mean that sincerely. I think there's a part of me that says we are in a moment where not only have we created all of this damage, we've affected people's sleep, we've affected their identities, we've affected their social development, we've affected their, in some cases, unfortunately, we've put them into rabbit holes in communities with some extremist beliefs, and they become radicalized because of that, because it's kind of the wild, wild west out there.
Hmm.
And those lives, in many ways, are going to be damaged by these behaviors, the medical problems, the social problems, the political conflict that's created by these types of situations that are allowed to sort of exist. And I get it. We want to give people the maximum freedom and why we have a First Amendment, and I support all of that. But we have to acknowledge those consequences. And to me, when it comes to the social media problem, I believe there are a lot of good organizations, a lot of good researchers who are looking at it currently, right? We have the Institute for Humane Technology, Tristan Harris, Haidt's book, and the work that he's doing. I think there's a lot of good people out there doing a lot of good things. My worry is that we are about to enter an era. Think about this. Social media, with the exception of like DMs and maybe Snapchat, but social media holistically is public.
Mm-hmm.
We are about to enter a world where billions of people will have conversations in the dark with their AI. That's amazing to me. No one's going to know. No one's going to see what those conversations are or how they're being shaped, except for obviously the AI company and those who own the large language models that are engaging. What does that mean for our society? What does it mean for me as a therapist when everybody can come in with their own AI, having felt that they've diagnosed themselves a certain way, right? We'll see that in the medical profession. We'll see it in a lot of places. Am I communicating with you or am I communicating with your AI? Did you write that? Did your AI write that? We have a lot of authenticity questions that we have to answer. So that's why I'm fascinated by it, because we're about to do it again in a way that is much more out of the public eye.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder often, how do we stay ahead of that? And so the way I stay ahead of that is the way I've always stayed ahead of it, which is to use it, to understand it. I can go back in time and tell you when people thought that the people who are using computers are wasting their time. What are you going to use this stupid thing for? Right? This is back in the day, if anybody, I'm going to carbon date myself here, but like the Apple IIc computer or the Commodore 64 back in the day, right? I remember when people would say, who is ever going to trust their credit card to the internet? Are you crazy? No one's going to do the online shopping. How's that going to work? And I hear it about artificial intelligence today, the same kind of stuff. People naysaying. They used it back in November of last year, and they have their opinion, and they don't realize in February the models have shifted significantly. And now, I built 5 websites in a weekend, and I don't code at all. So the threat of AI is so personal. There are knowledge threats, there are expertise threats, there's all of this, and everybody's trying to find ways to rationalize and predict. And my advice is just use it. Use it every day, understand it, because much like the internet, much like computers, that knowledge will be extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate the perspective you're taking, and it strikes me as very balanced. I want to wrap up here with sort of an idea of an alternative for listeners, because I think that's important with any sort of, I don't want to call it a problem, but any kind of dramatic change that's happening in society, that it's uncertain whether or not this is worth completely diving into. You currently run, I don't know how you would describe it, as like a board game club or a role playing meetup. And I would love for you to just describe how that started, some stories of people who have come to it and their reactions. I think it's a beautiful thing that you've started. And I would love for it to be a way for listeners to even think about alternatives to technology and ways that could spend their time on a weekend.
Yeah, I'm going to joke and say that this might be because I'm older, but this is what I'm about to tell you is the honest to goodness truth. I have had people around a table playing games since I was 12 years old. And there are 3 years in my life that I did not do that. I did not do that from 1988 to about 1991. And that's when I first joined the military. And I did not do that in 2000 to 2001, my first year at grad school. Every year, every place I've lived, I brought people around the table to play board games and play tabletop role playing games. And as time has gone on, what has emerged was maybe it started with board game, maybe it started with tabletop role playing game, but I started to notice a pattern, and that is deep friendships formed. Every place I was, deep friend, whether I was in Los Angeles or I lived in Cyprus or now here in New Mexico, sometimes our groups get together, and generally we'll start every group with like, catch us up on your week, what went on that week. And sometimes that catch up lasts several hours. And we don't have enough time maybe to jump in and play. So we just keep talking, right? That is what I think the power is, that consistency. You bring people around a table. It's a safe space. People are going to be taught to engage, whether it's a board game, whether it's a competitive board game or a cooperative board game. There's space for all kinds of people to jump in and learn. And the same thing with tabletop role-playing games, which obviously I think are 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, streaming content. I think about Critical Role and all of the sort of streaming content out there around tabletop role-playing games. It's easy for individuals to learn about this and see why it's engaging. But ultimately, what is wonderful about it is that it's technology free, in the sense that there's no media between me and the other individual when we're playing, right? We usually we tell people, don't put your phones to the side. I'm saying, we don't want to spend time on the phones here. And if somebody's got a call or something urgent comes up, of course they go. But I often tell people, I say, look, this is your fun time. Think about how you behave in a work meeting and how embarrassed you feel when your phone goes off in a work meeting and you start panicking and you're like, oh my God, my phone went off. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Don't you deserve that in your personal life? Don't you deserve that same level of like protection of your time? And that's how I try to convince people that it's not about a ban. It's about making people recognize this is their time to unplug and really be in the moment with other people around something that hopefully they're going to find fun.
That's amazing. And I think this is a great example of how to respond well to what's happening around us. I asked this for myself, but I've never been into role-playing games. And if I were to start, where should I start?
I tell everybody to start with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition because it's so popular and it's so easy to get into. For someone like me who has played way too many role-playing games, I think I have other favorites, but that's not important. I think what's important is being able to easily find people to play with and learn how to play and meet people. And Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is a very easy way to do that. And then from there, I think, much like anything, your taste will refine and you'll discover the things that you loved also. So yeah.
Cool. I'll have to look into it. Thank you so much. Is there anything regarding this topic that we didn't touch on that you would like to bring up?
I would say that if anybody wants to follow my AI journey, you can. I have a Facebook page I just launched called Prohaska Pontificates, because I can pontificate if that isn't obvious. And I will be sharing my AI adventure as a non-coder, as someone who does not have a technical background, but to identify what I think is really important to pay attention to.
Hmm.
And also locally, I've been starting to help businesses think about artificial intelligence to get rid of some of the work that is slowing them down, especially for small business owners. Las Cruces is about 100,000 people. And a lot of businesses here encounter all the challenges, and some could be easily automated. So I've spun up this local consulting firm that really it's more for helping people than I think it is for profit. I just enjoy places that I go where I'm a customer them automating will make my customer experience easier in the machine. So if you go to either www.strategyinthemachine.com or .ai, www.strategyandthemachine.ai, you can follow what I've been doing there as well. And I think to Gen Z, I would say you can have a huge impact in your community if you recognize that you're already using a lot of social media, and local businesses have started to know how to reach you on Facebook and other places. Now might be a good time to look into AI and start to set up your own guardrails, because it can be only a matter of time before engagement becomes something very important to AI companies. I really hope we avoid that mistake. But as the pressures of profit start to come, I think the best defense is learning about it, setting your own guardrails, and learn from what you have seen firsthand from social media and use it to engage in artificial intelligence and those products with your eyes wide open. Don't put your head in the sand, engage with it, but this time engage with it on your terms. Be conscious of what social media did to you, and now make sure you're using AI as a tool and you are not the tool for AI.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a powerful way to wrap up. Again, I really appreciate everything you've shared. And if there are any other links or sites, I'll make sure to consult with you and I'll add that to the description. But thanks so much for your time, Jerry. Appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Hi, friends. My name is Pat, and you're listening to the I Used to Think podcast, a podcast about people who are brave enough to change their mind. If this is your first time listening to the show, welcome. In 2012, Jerry joined the video game company Riot Games as their chief HR officer. During his time at Riot Games, the company grew tremendously, and so did the video game industry as a whole. Jerry observed as video games went from being fun, entertaining products to addicting products. He saw the ways in which games evolved from being enjoyable pastimes into monetization machines. After witnessing the effects of technology on society and mental health, Jerry decided to make a switch and became a licensed therapist to make a meaningful impact on his community. In today's episode, we cover a wide variety of topics regarding technology. Jerry and I talk about how there really is no such thing as an ethics-driven company as opposed to a profit-driven company, social media and how different social media bans have occurred around the world, and also how to properly engage with AI rather than ignore it. Although we discuss the somber reality of technological developments, we talk about how we can counteract those negative effects through simple community gatherings, such as board games and role-playing games, which is something that Jerry has been doing ever since he was young. Jerry brings a wide range of knowledge and experience to this conversation. Jerry brings a wide range of knowledge and experience to this conversation. He is a Navy veteran as well as Jerry brings a wide range of knowledge and experience to this conversation. He is a Navy veteran and also runs his own AI consulting business today. I think the topics that we talk about in this conversation are very relevant, and I hope to include more of this in future episodes. Let's get started. Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope it was insightful and enjoyable. If you know anyone interested in the topic of technology and ethics around technology, feel free to share this episode. Follow us on Instagram, Substack, and YouTube, and also check out Jerry's websites. His Facebook page and AI consulting business are in the description. If there's a topic that interests you and you would like to hear an episode on, feel free to DM me on Instagram, and you may hear an episode about it. Until next time, peace.